Welcome. A great keynote lunch. Such an interesting conversation with Ted Olson, with Condoleezza Rice. I am actually just terribly eager for this conversation too. This is not every panel is your favorite panel, but this really truly is my favorite panel of the conference. And it's because it's such a new topic. We're going to be exploring a variety of issues and themes that just are, many of you are hearing about in the media, but haven't really had a chance to kind of sit down and probe and go a little bit deeper. And what we're going to explore, we've already had one session that looked at online learning, and we explored a little bit about how online learning is sort of exploding in a whole bunch of different sort of options and forms and formats. And it used to be that we thought about online learning as you went to a virtual school or you went to a traditional school. And then it became you went to a virtual school, a traditional school, or a blended school. And increasingly, the same way that the internet has had the effect of disaggregating a lot of content, with the internet, what iTunes did to music, now we're seeing a whole swath of new types of technology that are doing that to courses, and you have course choice. And then there's this whole democratization of education that's happening largely through this new innovation called MOOCs. And so we're going to explore a little bit about MOOCs. We're going to explore one particular use of online learning and MOOCs and tablets in terms of helping to teach computer science. And then finally, there's this new wave of credentialing called badging. And badging is sort of taking off in a whole variety of different forms and fashions in education. We are laggards here. Any student that has ever worked with Xbox or PlayStation or Foursquare is very familiar with the concept of badging because they earn badges for all sorts of accomplishments, for time spent on tasks and so forth. The Mozilla Foundation is taking that and applying it to new types of education activities. But it is an incredibly exciting area, all these areas, but it's intersecting with a number of other types of education policies, with a lot of the work you're doing with assessments, with offering students options, and with, in the case of the computer science, thinking about what types of credits count towards students' high school graduation requirements. MOOCs, too, are also generating a ton of new tensions with education. Many of you are familiar with these new types of challenges schools are facing called bring your own device. What happens when you're a superintendent and a principal and students start coming to your school with tablets and with smartphones? What's the policy that you have in place? I think increasingly what we're going to start facing is what happens when students start bringing their own learning. What happens when a student has taken a code.org course? What happens when a student has actually enrolled in a Harvard or an MIT MOOC? How will schools recognize that credit? And how will badges be recognized? And how will that sort of be transferred within a system of education? So we're going to explore that today. I'll defer to you to actually look in your brochure, in the program guides for the bios of our distinguished panels so we can jump right into it. But to my right, and actually we have Hadi, who is going to be talking to us about code.org. To his right, we have Anant, I got that right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Who was recently on the Colbert show, right?
That's right.
That's right. So he survived Stephen Colbert. I'm not nearly as intimidating, so this will be great. And then to my left, we have Erin, too, from the Mozilla Foundation. We're going to start with some very brief presentations and remarks from each of the panelists. I'll facilitate some questions, and then we'll turn it over to you to ask some questions, too. So, Hani, I think we're going to start with you. Yeah.
All right. Well, code.org is an organization focused on bringing computer science to all of America's classrooms. And this panel is about using computers as part of learning, so learning via online classes. And computer science is related to that, but it's also slightly different. It's not just about learning using technology, it's about learning how to create technology.
My talk is about America's untapped opportunity, and I mentioned that there's one thing that separates people like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or Larry Page from most people in this room or most people in America, which is that they took a computer science class when they were in high school. This slide here shows a pie chart within high school of STEM education. You know, the entire pie is all time spent on science, technology, engineering, and math, and that little slice at the top shows the kids taking computer science classes. This shows the jobs picture within science, technology, engineering, and math in terms of new jobs projected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics over the next 10 years, the percentage that are in computer science. And you wonder, well, why is this slide so off base? It's not because the students don't want to enroll in computer science, it's because 90% of our schools don't even teach it, and so it's not on the menu. And the schools that have it are typically suburban schools in wealthier, better off districts. It's missing in most rural and urban and underprivileged districts, which is a major problem in terms of just the American dream, because the jobs you see out there are the best paying jobs in the country, but the pathway to getting to those jobs is unavailable to 90% of Americans. One thing I want to point out, which is our organization is working to bring computer science to schools, but we're also working on policy change. So anybody here who is a policymaker or who can influence policy can help us with this. The issue is that in 35 states of the country, computer science classes don't count to satisfy existing math and science graduation requirements. And this is an easy thing to fix. And we're not asking people to require computer science. It's required in countries like China. We're just asking that if it's offered, allow it to count. And in the states that do have that policy, you see enrollment higher among everybody. There's a 50% enrollment growth, and the percentage of people enrolling among women, Hispanics, African Americans, the underprivileged and underrepresented students of color is also higher. So it's an incredibly easy policy change to make. We've already enabled Tennessee, Idaho, Washington to change policy on this just in the last 4 months, and we're looking forward to basically helping the rest of the country get there. So if you're interested in that, there's a handout on your seats that basically lay out the case of this policy change. The last thing I want to talk about is a movement we're starting for December of this year, for the second week of December, and this is something that any school or school district can engage their students in computer science at all grade levels and all ages without the hassle and challenge of bringing in a computer science teacher. And this is a campaign called the Hour of Code. If you could skip to the next slide. So the Hour of Code campaign is this campaign we're launching for the second week of December. The idea is for any math teacher, English teacher, science teacher to offer 1 hour of computer science during their regular class. And we have prizes for every single teacher who participates. We have prizes, and we have the backing of Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Apple. I have a list of tech companies that the entire tech industry is helping make this campaign a big deal, but also a whole number of education organizations are also helping spread this, because as a country we have a challenge of how to adopt this course. It's hard to get it into the schools, and it's hard to get the teachers trained, but it's something that our kids naturally want. And for the Hour of Code, we're actually building an online course similar to the MOOCs we're going to be talking about, and it's a 1 hour course, but our 1 hour course will feature both Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg as lecturers, and it's going to feel a little bit like a game, and in fact it's going to include Angry Birds as part of it. So you're writing a computer program to make the little Angry Bird go and find its pig, which is perfect for kids, and they'll think of it as playing a game, and under the covers they're going to learn the same concepts that are used in computer science. So thank you very much for the 5 minutes of listening to me, but if you have a chance to change policy in your state, please look at this thing, and if you reach schools, please spread the Hour of Code campaign. You can visit hourofcode.com and learn more about it.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll come back for a little bit of conversation and discussion too about how online learning, tablets, and other sort of tools are being used, apps in that space. But Dr. Agarwal, can you tell us a little bit about edX and its creation, and also the most recent partnership you've had with Google, and what is that allowing in terms of education? But give us a little introduction.
Sure. Thank you, John. edX is a nonprofit venture. It's a learning destination. We were founded by Harvard and MIT about a year and a half ago with a $60 million investment. I like to call this a nonprofit startup, if there is such a thing. We have, what edX does is that offers online courses, higher ed courses to students all over the world for free. We have about 1.4 million students from every single country in the world, and depending on who you ask, it's between 214 and 217 countries. We can't even agree on how many countries we have in the world. But so we have a number of university partners that create the content. So edX is a destination. A number of university partners, we have about 30 of them from all over the world, Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, Georgetown, IIT Bombay, Tsinghua University, ETH just joined us, a number of other universities from around the world that offer courses on edX. And students can come and take these courses for free. So here you see a course listed. It's a Science of Cooking course from Harvard University, where they have these great cooks from all over the world, like Ferran and others from Barcelona that show these amazing recipes and cook. and use that to teach physics. So there's a whole bunch of cool courses, about 75 courses, and increasing as we speak. So our mission is threefold. We want to increase access to education for students in our country and around the world. We want to improve campus education at the same time. And we also want to do research on how students learn so that we can improve, really understand how learning could be improved. Now, as I said, our courses are free. We're a nonprofit. What we've also done is we've also made a platform available for free. So it's, a lot of people don't, what does it mean to make a platform available for free as open source code? So just imagine you have a ship that's going from port to port giving away free goods, stopping at every port giving away free goods. Think of the free goods as free courses. What edX has done is we've told people that our ship is also free. You want a ship? Here, take a ship. So that if you're not visiting some of your ports, you can take our ship or take another ship that we will give you, and you can create and visit some ports. And if there are some courses that we don't have, you can create your own courses. So to go back to your question about Google and China, so last week, China announced Xuetang X. That stands for School X. So they took the edX open source platform, it's called OpenEdX, and they stood up this portal, Xuetang X. And the consortium of universities, led by Tsinghua in China, we're offering courses in the Chinese language to all of China. Now, edX has courses that we offer to the world, and they will be licensing courses from edX and translating them into Mandarin and so on, and offering them within the Chinese market. That's China. In terms of Google, Google was building its own open source platform for courses called Course Builder. We discovered we had the same mission. It was, the idea was not to make a lot of money, but really do good, make the platform open source. So we decided to put a wood behind the same arrow, so to speak. And then Google has come on board, and their engineers are working with edX on improving the edX platform instead of building a separate platform. And so they're also working with them to see how we can expand access to universities, corporations, NGOs, and others in terms of offering courses as well. So you mentioned earlier when you started out about how this can impact high schools. So a number of our courses are being taken by high schoolers. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Andover High. How many people here are familiar with Andover High School? Any alums? So with Andover High School, they allowed 13 of the students to take edX courses in history and physics and other subjects, and they got high school credit for taking those courses. This summer, we had a program with Rahm Emanuel and his team in Chicago. We launched something called High School X, where we taught an introductory computer science course. This was Introduction to Computer Science and Python Programming out of MIT to Chicago high schoolers. To 300, we offered a MOOC. So think of this as MOOC is a massive open online course that anybody can go and take from anywhere. So think of this as a SPOC. So we define the SPOC term. SPOC stands for Small Private Online Course. So we taught this course to Chicago high schoolers working with the Chicago mayor and his team. And we had 300 high schoolers take this course in Chicago. So similar courses are being offered in many high schools, many other universities around the world as a SPOC. And I'll take another a minute or two and give you a quick sense of what a MOOC looks like. How many people here have taken a MOOC?
Wow.
So here's a chance to, I would encourage you to go to edx.org. Sign up, it's free. It takes you 5 seconds to sign up. And you can take an online course in subjects ranging from poetry to history to medicine to law to physics and chemistry, biology, from some of the greatest professors and universities in the world. For example, you can take biology from Eric Lander, who heads up the Broad Institute and is part of the president's PCAST committee. So you can take physics from Walter Lewin, who Bill Gates has called the world's best physics professor. So just great courses. So to give you a quick sense of what a course looks like, so here's a student dashboard where instead of a 1-hour lecture, you get to do these videos. How many of you are familiar with Khan Academy and Khan courses? Very good. So Sal Khan, you can say that he learned, he was my student, but I think he learned me good. We've been really inspired by Sal. So this concept of short videos. So we have these short videos interleaved with exercises that you can work through, and as part of and do the course in your own at your own pace. So here's an example of an exercise in chemistry. If you say, hey, here's a problem, go solve the problem. And so here's a student solving a chemistry problem. So you ask a question, students enter the chemistry equation, and the computer will grade that automatically. Oops, I got it wrong. Hey, it's instant grading, instant feedback, so they can keep trying till they get it right. It becomes like a game experience, a gaming experience where you keep trying something until you get it right. And the green check mark has become somewhat of a real cult symbol at edX. We can also do labs and so on, which are pretty exciting. So for example, here's a physics or a circuits laboratory where you can use a gaming experience, almost like a Lego blocks online. People can build things. So a lot of cool stuff can be done this way. I encourage you to go and check out a course. And these courses are also being offered on campus. We're bringing online to campus and combining it with in-person to create a blended model of learning. So as an example, within a year, 2,500 out of 6,000 MIT students, undergraduates, are using the edX platform in one way, shape, or form in these blended models of courses. So I think the online, where you blend online components with in-person components, I think I predict in 10 to 15 years, that component will be in every high school, every college the world over. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. So, Erin, tell us a little bit about badging and how that is playing a role. And again, with Rahm Emanuel in Chicago was a big rollout. But tell us a little bit about badging and the ecosystem that's needed for the credentialing and how it's awarded and how it's being used.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Erin from Mozilla. I get to talk about badging. So badges are really just digital records of learning, skills, and achievement. So they are essentially reimagining what credentials or micro-credentials look like in the world where things like multiple measures, competency-based learning, bridging informal and formal, where all of these things are sort of high interest areas and priorities. Really, the Open Badges work is what would a credential or, again, micro-credentials look like to support this type of work. And as we all probably know, the concept of a badge is not new. John mentioned, in Xbox or in the gaming world, certainly we all probably remember the sashes with the Girl or Boy Scout badges on them. And so, this is really building from those ideas of capturing things through these kind of markers. But the sort of new piece of this is this idea of digital badges that are meant to represent learning. And so when we move into this kind of like digital space, it gives us a lot of opportunities. And so one is that the badges are information-based. And so you can see this cute little image that one of our community members made. It was like the anatomy of a badge. Each badge is not just the kind of pretty little image on the front, but it's actually full of a set of information behind that defines who the issuer is, who the recipient is, what the actual criteria for that badge was, so what a learner had to do to earn that badge, and even what the actual evidence is. So if I wrote an essay or completed, an assessment or some project, you can link to that from behind the badge. So that way, wherever that badge is shared across that ecosystem, it's carrying all the information needed to understand that badge and to start to evaluate it. We can also use badges to be more granular, so to start to capture more. So instead of just a degree at the end of many learning experiences and possibly many different pathways within that learning experience, we can start to actually capture more of those granular skills through these badges, so that it's more about the collection of things that you have and the actual pathways that you took than just the sort of abstract marker at the end. Also, badges are interoperable. So one of the things that Mozilla has done, part of the Open Badges work, is define what's called the Open Badges standard, which really is just a definition of what that information behind the badge should be, what the minimal information. And that way, badges are issued from different schools or from after-school programs or museums or what have you. They're all following that same kind of information model, and that means those badges issued and those learning experiences essentially then become interoperable. So me as a learner, I can actually start to collect badges across lots of these different learning experiences and sort of build this portfolio of what I know and what I can do. They're also stackable. So I kind of qualify when I say credentials, or micro-credentials, because you can imagine these being, again, kind of more representing more granular things, but the power becomes in sort of the stack, right? Like I can show you a collection of things that show I know something within this particular discipline versus just one or two here and there. And finally, they're portable, so they're digital, so that these become a currency online, essentially, where you can share with stakeholders across the web. You can add to your profiles all across social networks or what have you. They really can become part of your identity, and in a verifiable way, sort of attach your skills and your and the things that you know and can do to that. So again, the idea. The reason it's called open is that the learner's at the center, and this learner is able to collect these badges representing the things that they, the skills that they have across MOOC experiences from their schools, from an after-school program, from a local museum. The idea is let's collect all of that and really show that full portfolio of skills and learning. And so John had asked, in preparation about what does this mean for education, and I really think it is just a big kind of supplement to education at this point. So the badge itself is meaningless without the learning and the assessment that it represents, right? And so again, the information behind the badge is meant to capture that and explicitly define or include what that learning was and what that assessment is, but that learning assessment still has to be there. A badge is the sort of the medium that sits on top of it, makes it more transferable and portable. And so really the badges really are just about, again, representing and communicating some of the existing learning and assessment. There are opportunities that badges give that sort of afford some innovation around assessment. Certainly if we're thinking more at the granular level, there are things like peer assessment or self-assessment or ways that we can be a little bit more innovative and capture that learning, but still roll up into those larger outcomes. Again, that stackable idea. And connection is a big piece here, and so I'll talk about that in Chicago, and I think it'll come up again, certainly in policy implications, because the badges can act as that connector. Again, they can be the medium that communicates the learning across lots of different contexts. So when we're talking about multiple measures, when we're talking about linking informal, when we're talking about competency-based learning, the badges actually can be the medium, again, to capture things and then to really carry those across those contexts. And then, they're not just for students. There's lots of folks out there like NSTA, Connected Educator Month, that are really exploring badges for teachers as well, to start to recognize more innovative practices, kind of more at that grassroots level, that then can kind of roll up into a better understanding of, or at least new perspectives on what teacher excellence can look like. So quickly to touch on the Chicago piece is, we were approached by Mayor Emanuel and the city of Chicago early this year. Basically, they have, like every city, a lot of kind of local cultural institutions that provide a lot of learning experiences over the summer. And so what they wanted to do was a couple things. One was get more kids involved in that, so more kids learning across the summer and learning more. But then second is actually making that count. So carrying that back to schools, helping teachers understand what kids did and connecting that to real results and opportunities for these kids. So we worked with the City of Chicago team, as well as a bunch of those learning providers, including the edX course, to actually work to develop a set of badges that captured all of that learning. So the parks issued badges, the zoos, the local libraries, the museums, they all basically developed badges that reflected the things they were already learning. So again, that learning was there, the assessment was there, all of that was there. The badges just, again, helped capture that in a way that was collectible and trackable. And then we worked with them to also create pathways. So a kid might be enrolled in the local parks, and they earned a badge from there, and we said, hey, you earned this badge, here's some other opportunities. There were online opportunities, there were local museums, et cetera, so to really get them to kind of level up and learn more. And then at the end of it, all of those badges, so everything from the kind of initial learning experiences all the way through those kind of up-leveled pathways, all then are transferred back to the schools. And so the school, Chicago Public Schools, are accepting some of those, or working with us to accept some of those as potentially for credit. Some of that is kind of advancement and sort of entry access to special projects within the schools, and even just kind of understanding of participation. And DePaul University in Chicago has announced that they're accepting some of those badges for credit and in using them in their admissions decision. So it really was just a really great experience of showing kind of how the badges can capture the learning that's already there, make it count for youth, and really connect things across orgs.
Great. So I think you could see like how this is, part of an emerging ecosystem of how students will learn, that you have these blended environments, online environments, but how do you track, students start, as these options and start expanding, how do you keep track of it? Badging provides a bit of a connective tissue there in many ways, with both sort of traditional after-school, formal and informal, sort of a lot of that language. I love the language too. You use so casually, leveling up. It's something we don't sort of talk about in education, but it's a sort of a popular gaming term. Just to facilitate now more of a conversation, but tell us a little bit. MOOCs, I think for a lot of people in the mainstream sort of discussion of MOOCs is it going to replace higher education? And they get these bad raps for like low completion rates. But what is the one thing that the conventional wisdom gets wrong about sort of MOOCs from what you're seeing with all the different types of experimentation with courses and students that are participating?
There's a huge set of things I could pick from, but I think a couple of the biggest, one of the biggest things people don't realize is, and again connect this back to badging and certificates, is that so far a lot of people feel, take a course, what do I get out of it? Nothing. But it turns out that give some examples of and stories where you take a course, take a MOOC course. At the end of it, you can either audit it, which is audit it for free. You can also get an honor code certificate, and this begins to look like a badge. In fact, it is a badge. It is an edX. We call it we happen to call it an honor code certificate. We could have called it a badge or some other credential. It's called an honor code certificate, and they get something that looks like a certificate. In fact, some folks are talking about creating a business where print out these certificates on various materials and ship them out as an added fee or something like that. But so people are using these certificates in a variety of ways. We've also launched what are called ID verified certificates, where we check the ID of the student, of the learner, and for a small fee. And edX keeps track of these credentials. So once you get an honor code certificate, we keep track of that credential. We also launched what are called X series certificates, where these become stackable credentials. We can have. So MIT launched for computer science, said they're going to offer 7 courses, and you can get a certificate for each course. But if you take all the 7 courses, pass all of them, you're going to get a credential or a certificate for the entire discipline. So imagine getting a computer science or a Foundations of Computer Science X series certificate from MIT, or a badge for computer science, for the whole discipline. And to me, what people don't realize is that the extraordinary power of this. Talk about jobs and so on. Here are free courses, and for a small amount of money, you can get these ID verified certificates, which would lead to a credential that could then help you get jobs. In fact, people are telling us that they are. There's a person who told us they got a job at this company because he took a Berkeley software as a service course. I don't want to mention the name of the company, but he got a job in this Washington D.C. company, and he said because of that course that he took and the certificate that he got. Another student, this story is public, so it's on the website. Mary Liu was a teacher in Western High School. She took an edX course, and then she used that to get a certain teacher credit in training she's doing. So a number of stories of students who use these as a credential in their resumes, or they post it on LinkedIn and other places. So this is kind of the untold story, a story of people that are making use of these certificates in ways that we have not seen.
How is online learning being, so let's say folks want to sign up for code.org. How does online learning and, again, some of these new sort of tools that make the courses available, how do you help connect people to those opportunities through, whether it's Hour of Code or just sort of generally, once you convince someone computer science is something that they can take?
Sure. Well, computer science is something, unlike math or English or history or or cooking that you've always needed to learn on a computer. It's somewhat of a new thing to use computers to teach these other topics, but when you're learning computer science, the computer has to be part of there. For decades now, people have basically used the computer as a tool to program, but it's been traditionally, you read a textbook about how to program the computer, and then you do the work on the computer, and then you go back to your textbook. And with the advent of the internet and actually just people getting inspired by things like Khan Academy, these programs have basically effectively moved the textbook itself into the computer, the homework assignments into the computer, to make it so that you're just interfacing with something that feels and looks like a game, really, and you're just given puzzles, and you solve the puzzle, and you move to the next puzzle. And the exciting thing about that is you can actually just give an iPad with a course built into it to children at any age, and they can come out of that course at the end capable computer programmers. And the exciting thing about that is this is one of the fastest growing fields in terms of jobs. It's the most competitive area of our economy in general. It's one of the few places where America is clearly #1 is in creating software. But we're definitely not #1 at creating software engineers. And when it comes to educating them, this is something that we need to get into our schools. One thing the panel hasn't talked about that I think is interesting, though, is using these online type of capabilities in public education. Mm-hmm. Typically, whether it's the Khan Academies or the MOOCs, they're all for the kid who wants to learn outside of the classroom. And 90% of kids don't do that. 90% of kids, they do the minimum they need to do what the teacher tells them, and then they go off and play football or learn to play the guitar or whatnot. And Khan Academy is, I think, pushing the envelope on this, but we also plan to do the same, because in computer science, it's just not even being taught. In most other fields, people talk about, oh, you can use the computer to teach math better. We're talking about you're not even teaching computer science, and the computer can teach it for you, which is a great, release valve, because the average school doesn't have a spare teacher who's trained in computer science, and they're like, well, how are we going to teach this field? And it's nice to say, well, the actual device can assist in the training. So our goal is to bring the blended learning model that you can use it with an edX to learn university level stuff on your spare time to bring into the mainstream of K-12 education.
So building off of that, is something Dr. Agarwal said as well, about the high school teacher that used edX to get a teacher credit. But it strikes me that oftentimes when we're talking about MOOCs or computer coding, we're talking about sort of a student learning experience. But it sounds like this could be also an effective way to do professional development for teachers.
Absolutely.
Or do you have tools that can help if a teacher wants to figure out in their school setting how to teach using your tools?
Our model is basically blended for both. For teacher training, for a high school teacher, we'll offer roughly 6 weeks of training, of which 4 weeks of that is online, and then 2 weeks is in person. And there's plenty of data that shows that at the graduate level, and if you're older, that works just fine. At the K-12 level, we think it's blended, where you can't do a purely online model. You need a teacher and the online course.
Yeah, there are examples in other areas as well. So, for example, there's a course called Mechanics Re-Review, which is a physics course for teachers, and is largely taken by teachers on edX, where it's about physics, but it's also about how to teach physics, and courses like that and others, we've seen that you can take it purely online. And I love the way Hardy talked about how the computers can not just be used to train programmers, but with the MOOCs and so on, computers are used to teach people anything. In fact, so far, a year ago I thought certain things could not be done, and today we are grading using AI technology to even grade essays. I mean, it's something I could not believe that we could even do a year ago. So never say never. But that said, purely online, you do so well. And what we found is in some experiments we did with community colleges, Mass Bay and Bunker Hill community colleges, with the Gates Foundation grant, we offered MOOC courses, or the SPOC courses within the community college. And studies with the colleges show that the grades of the community college students who took it in a blended model with the teacher assisting versus people who take it as a MOOC, the blended model students had an average grade point which was 10 points higher than across all the students than the students who took it as a MOOC. So the blended model, there's increasing evidence showing that the blended model is simply better.
How about with badging? Is there a way of using badging in the professional development world so that teachers could earn a Common Core badge if they complete a certain amount of professional development credits? Or are you seeing that at all in terms of an interest of teacher credentials?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is a lot of power in, again, as I said before, like not just thinking about these as badges or indicators for learners, but also really allowing us to kind of innovate around the types of skills that we want to sort of celebrate or recognize in teaching. And so Connected Educator Month, which is running right now by American Institute of Research and Department of Ed, is really focused on digital skills and digital literacies for teachers. And so they've developed a bunch of kind of really low-level badges that recognize, using Twitter or getting your colleagues on Twitter, using technologies in the classroom, lots of, again, seemingly sort of small skills, but again, one, they start to tell us a little bit more about how willing teachers are around innovation and the types of skills that they know. And then two, again, it's about the stackable credentials. So in aggregate, when you start to see a teacher that has a bunch of these, you can start to understand again sort of more about this teacher and start to kind of make some decisions around their sort of propensity for innovation. And so that's an example of a really low level. But then, there's the NSTA is doing a bunch of stuff around teacher community participation and working groups and like really inspiring teachers to come together around key issues and sort of earn badges along the way for that kind of participation, which again feeds back into how we understand these teachers. And then there's several school districts. Adams County is one of them that's really using Adams County 50, which is using badges for sort of teacher professional development and kind of continuing education internally, but it's the way they sort of track what teachers have done and sort of how they're sort of doing across the board. So I think there's tons of opportunity there as well.
I think we'll go to questions in 1 minute, but I just want to do a quick rapid fire with the panel. We have a lot of policymakers in the audience who can pull various types of policy levers with regulations, with legislation. What is one barrier that policymakers can remove in order to help get rid of a barrier to your innovation? And what's one policy lever they could pull to help accelerate the adoption of your innovation? And Erin, let's start with you, and then we'll go down.
Okay. So yeah, I would say I'll start with the positive. I really think, again, there's lots of common themes here that I mentioned and we've heard mentioned around multiple measures, around competency-based learning, around linking informal and formal. And I think really kind of considering badges as the connector, as that kind of technology to capture more and to carry it across context is really the big opportunity. And so I think there's lots of opportunities for pilots, and we're certainly open to working and helping with anyone that wants to sort of explore that. And I think in terms of barriers, I really think it's just, getting past the concept of a badge or getting past the thinking of it as stuck within games and really thinking about what credentials or micro-credentials look like in this kind of modern world where we're sort of trying to innovate and tackle these problems, and really sort of be evangelists or open to these as basically information-based records that can help us tell more and communicate more again across contexts.
Great.
So one of the on some of the regulations and policy issues, what's interesting is whenever you create a new thing, a new transformational technology, you run afoul of a number of policies that were created with antediluvian models in mind. So when the internet came up, suddenly people were running around trying to figure out which laws should apply to the internet. Should it be media, print media laws? Should it be movie laws? And when I saw those things, I used to laugh many years ago and said, that'll never apply to anything I do. But today, with edX, we have these online courses running all over the world. We are just training on every single law known to mankind. I'll give you one simple example. And so here, I just encourage policymakers to keep an open mind and to really, think about how we need to change laws very quickly, or at least give us nonprofit people trying to do good a break here. I'll give you a simple example. We offer these courses for free, and students from all over the world can take these courses. It's a good thing. So clearly, students from Sudan, Syria, and countries of and Cuba take these courses. And these are courses in English. These are good courses, and it's, I think, good for the U.S. We're doing good, and people take these courses and they feel kindly towards the U.S. So, what law do you think potentially one could be running afoul of when students from those countries take these free courses?
Exporting.
It's called export control, which is that you can do business with you can do business with certain countries. And so here there's free courses, and people are taking them. It's a good thing for the U.S. It's a good thing for all of us, and everybody agrees it's a good thing, and they all encourage us to keep doing it. But you have to do something about the law, because the literal interpretation of the law says that there's a challenge there. So, and I could go on and on about a number of laws that need to be rethought. The second one, in terms of challenges. Another place where policymakers can help is that we've gotten ourselves into a very rigid stovepiped system. Our education system is 4 years. We have students coming to campus, and there's something called a degree. The degree is a stovepipe thing where you take mechanical engineering courses and you get a degree in mechanical engineering. However, a millennial student, they are multidisciplinary. They want to learn about policy. They want to take Chinese courses. They want to do economics. They want to do community service. They want to take mechanical engineering as part of what they do. So the whole world is changing around us, but we as educators and policymakers really haven't changed. So I think, why 4 years? Why don't we rethink that? People coming in can take MOOCs or Khan Academy style learning or badging, and come in and use badging to replace certain credit restrictions. There are a number of other things that we need to revisit and rethink. And I think the best I can do is exhort you to keep an open mind as these issues come up, because a freight, this big freight train is coming, and a change. We will need to rethink and change a lot of what we're doing if you want to take full advantage of this new technology that can potentially improve the quality of education substantially, and also potentially help us improve the efficiency of education, something that we've seen skyrocketing costs over the past decade.
Well, your question is kind of a lead into what I opened my talk with, which is what's a policy change that can remove a barrier. For us, this handout that we put out is the policy that we're trying to get fixed in 35 different states, where in 35 states of the country, you could take an advanced placement college-level computer science course and it doesn't count towards graduation credit. And even in California, the mecca of technology, computer science is in the same bucket as horseshoe design and fertilizer mixing, not in the same bucket as calculus, biology, physics, chemistry. And we're effectively, from a policy level, punishing computer science because it's new, even though it's the new thing that is basically driving our country's economy. So it's a very simple policy change. It's highly bipartisan, pro-children, pro-economy, pro-workforce. So anybody here, whether you're a policymaker or just have influence, it's something you can help in the states that don't do this. In terms of, that's for removing the barrier to technology education and computer science education. In terms of accelerating it, what we would love to have is states that basically create incentives for their schools to actually teach this. 90% of schools don't teach computer science, and we're going to do the work philanthropically as a nonprofit to provide the professional development to schools to basically bring teachers online and bring this course to schools. But it would really help if the state's policies also actually had some kind of incentive for the school system and for the states to adopt it, because the average school tells us, well, we have to do math and science and physics and biology. Where are we going to fit this in? Because the state isn't telling them that you really should find a way to fit it in. So helping us get that adoption from the school principals who have too much on their hands would be very, very helpful.
Excellent. We are going to turn it over to you now for questions. We have 2 mics. We need you to queue up behind the mics for the questions. I want to comment on one actual theme amongst all three of you in terms of a policy barrier of sense is the recognition of the credential. In some cases where you pass AP computer science and you don't get that as a credit towards high school graduation. In your case with badges, that students can earn badges, but if it doesn't mean anything in the high school setting or in the college setting, And that's all, and the same thing with edX courses as well, that these are all, dealing with credentials and recognitions that often are sort of embedded in state laws or state regulations. And so tackling that could be sort of a huge lever in terms of helping to accelerate some of the adoptions here, it seems like. Yeah. We'll start here and then we'll go over it. Maybe just say your name and ask a quick question.
Yovel Badash. I have a two-part question. One is that most of you are non-for-profits. If you can elaborate on the model of free. So how this scales globally? How do you make money when $60 million, or how do you run out, or how do you build a scalable model that would work in the Google world? And then in conjunction with that, how does that affect if you can give a ship with goods everywhere, and then there's a factory in that that port that is dealing with the same goods that you're giving them for free? What does that do for that economy? And my point is the research that is done all over the world. If you have the biology course from MIT or from wherever, which is the best, what happens to a biology researcher from India that can't compete and can't really, and doesn't have any justification to continue or finance, because no one's going to finance or support them?
Okay.
Well, you had 4 questions disguised as one, but so I'll try to answer, a couple of them. How do we be self-sustaining? So we're all nonprofit, but when people have said nonprofit, but that means you don't move fast, you're slow, you're like governments. We see how fast governments move or don't move. And how do you move fast? And I point them to Mozilla Foundation. I think Mozilla was a phenomenal success. It was a nonprofit. They're self-sustaining. They have, they made a lot of money, but it's for a good cause. It's self-sustaining. There's no IPO. There's no individuals running around in yachts around the world. So I think that's a good thing. So how do we be self-sustaining? So we have a number of business models. One of them is that our courses are free. You can even get an honor code certificate for free. But if you want an ID verified certificate, it's like a freemium model. You want a special service for which we have to pay some extra amount of money. Then we ask you for a small amount of money. It's like $25, $50, $100 for a certificate for a great course from Berkeley, for example. And even there, we also allow students to pay a donation. We said, look, here's the minimum fee. You can pay more to support our mission. And believe it or not, we are actually, in these revenues, we are collecting about 10 to 20% more because people are actually paying more than we are asking them for those certificates. So that's one approach. That's a business to consumer. Another approach is as we give the ship for free, many people have come back and told us, this is a great ship, we're going to stand up the ship, but just as insurance, can we pay you some money so you can help us when the ship runs into trouble, or if you want to refurbish the ship and you want some special features. And so that's like, for those of you who know Linux, it's like a Red Hat for Linux. Linux is free, but Red Hat is a very successful company. So edX could become a Red Hat for learning and offer services. Very quickly, in terms of shipping goods, what happens to free goods in the ports? My quick answer is that most of the goods that we're providing are actually not available out there. So these courses are in many areas. Say computer science courses, those are simply not available in many of the schools. And so in many cases, it's offering a need. It's satisfying a need where something did not exist before. So let me stop at those 2 questions.
Anyone else want to comment on that last?
I guess I would say, so Anant already stole my answer. So Mozilla Foundation, has some really innovative approaches. So they make Firefox, which many of you might know Mozilla as, and so there's actually a corporation that runs that, and that money then feeds back into the foundation. But the Open Badges project at Mozilla, sits in the foundation and benefits from that slightly, but is mostly grant-based. One thing I didn't talk about is that what we provide is both that Open Badges standard, but also a tool stack or a set of technologies that help creating badges, issuing badges, all of that. And so that tool stack is free, but then we are available for services on top of that. So, hosting, customizing, and even some of the sort of definition and badge system design on top of it. So that's sort of how we are self-sustaining at this point.
Great. Next question.
Yes, Lou DePalma, state senator in Rhode Island on the Finance Committee and Education Committee, but also work at a major defense firm as a computer engineer, computer scientist, so with a degree in both. So thanks for doing this, great panel, great insights here. So a couple comments and I have a question for you at the end, and be interested in seeing some of the data Anant has about the complementary material with regards to digital learning complementing classroom learning. One of the challenges we see in making decisions as a vice chair of the Senate Finance Committee is people come forward with a new initiative. Mm-hmm. So a new initiative, and I'll pick on the badges for a second. Sounds great. Seems like it's a good thing. It's been around for a little bit. But I'll equate that to people thought whole language was a good thing. My wife's a kindergarten teacher in a private school. Whole language was a good thing. People went back to doing phonics. We heard about fuzzy math, or people talk about fuzzy math this morning. The focus are now back on getting the answers to the problems. All this is a piece of it. We just need to be cognizant that as we move down the path towards this new initiative or new thinking on things, where's the quality to ensure that it's the right thing to do? So I guess the real question for the panel is, as we develop these online courses, digital media, whatever the case may be, separate out the computer science course that's teaching you computer science, but using digital media to teach courses, have we thought about having an independent, and granted MIT is a phenomenal school, Berkeley, Stanford, all great schools you mentioned up there, is there an independent third party that can do the quality control, check on that? So as a policymaker in the state of Rhode Island, let's say, and somebody wants to look at digital learning, we can ensure that when we're spending $1 on digital learning, like we're spending $1 in the classroom, we can ensure that there's value there. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on the quality control side.
So it's a good question, just because I think this is one of the challenges that MOOCs are experiencing right now. But I could imagine this in sort of the badging world, that the badging credibility is only as good as its weakest link. That, if I'm very difficult in terms of awarding a badge, but Jenna gives out badges left and right. How do you maintain that quality? How are you seeing that in kind of the worlds that you're in, and even with computer science, in terms of all the different approaches that students can learn it?
Yeah, so in the badging, I think the first part of your question around sort of how do you evaluate the sort of projects from the get-go or from the initially, again, just to reiterate that the badges really represent learning and content that's already there, right? So this isn't about new content or necessarily new pedagogy, although it can be, but it's about putting these kind of digital transferable records on top of them. So that's one piece of it. But in terms of the quality, so there's this question comes up a lot because as an open badges type of initiative, the idea is that anyone can issue badges. So as a learner, I'm supposed to be able to collect badges across lots of different experiences, and that makes people really nervous. But there's lots of things within the badge itself or within the model that help us get closer to where we're more comfortable. So again, badges are information based, so they carry the information with them about the criteria, about the assessment. So even if I got some badges over here that were a less robust kind of assessment, and some over here that were more robust, again, that information is outlined within that badge. So somebody trying to understand it is going to see that, which is more data than they usually have, to make some of those decisions. Secondly, there's sort of some low-level kind of verification, again, because these badges are all kind of conforming to the standard. We know we have information there to actually do checks like, did this person really earn this badge, or is this issuer really who they say? So there's some of that kind of low level, which again we don't always have access to. And then finally, there's a feature called endorsement, which is essentially a third party can review the curriculum behind a badge and essentially sign it or endorse it, which then essentially gives their sort of kind of trust or check mark on that curriculum that badge represents. And so you could imagine, standards bodies or superintendent's offices or what have you, actually reviewing the set of badges that are out there and endorsing the ones that they felt comfortable. And really it breaks down into just more information in the badge, but again starts to allow us to build that kind of validation and sort of trust layer over these credentials without having to say there's one organization that can review everything and say if that's good or bad. Because once we do that, we can't scale, right? And so what we're trying to really do is investigate these types of approaches of leveraging each other, leveraging the experts that we already have across communities of practice, across standards bodies, et cetera, and allow that to be, to again, add that extra information and validation into this new kind of credentialing.
So I wanted to make a comment, although you didn't target computer science as something that is new, but when we have conversations with schools and districts, we do fall in the bucket of, oh, this is new, and if it's new, it's unknown, is it unproven, whatnot. But I want to make sure people realize computer science was new roughly 60 years ago. It was catching on roughly 30 years ago. We're now at the point where every single person in this room has a computer either in your pocket, on your lap, or in your purse. And also every single person in this room, when you were in high school, learned how to dissect a frog. And your kids, when they go through high school, will learn how to dissect a frog. But how many of your kids are going to learn how to build an app, or how that thing in your pocket that's, your car probably has 50 computers inside of it that you don't know about. The average kid in this country just doesn't even have it in their school system. And that's something that we need to get past this point of it's new. But part of the challenge is, since we didn't learn it in our own schools, it's unfamiliar. It's no longer new. It's 60 years old, but it's still unfamiliar. And part of the reason why we're doing this Hour of Code campaign is literally to get 10 million people or more, to get every American to take 1 hour to remove this veil of unfamiliarity, just get a sense of what is this thing that is called computer science. And once you learn for 1 hour, you can realize, oh, it's not as hard as I thought. It's not harder than dissecting a frog or all these other things that you learn in school. And so our goal is to basically build familiarity among not just students, but also teachers, policymakers, to get us over the hump of bringing this into our schools.
So if I could take a crack at that as well. I think the senator from Rhode Island asked a really good question. As we create something that's really radically, certainly MOOCs are new. Online learning is not new. Online learning has been going on for 30, 40, 50 years in various forms, probably as old as computer science. But MOOCs are new, and I think the excitement is also very new. Excitement for learning is new. So a number of studies are ongoing. So I'll give you one study. Because the transformational impact is so great and the consequences are so monumental, that it's really important to be watching out for, is this a good idea or not? And the studies so far have been very promising. So last fall, we worked with San Jose State University in California, and we offered a MOOC course in a blended model on their campus. And they took 250 students, good experiment. They divided up into three batches of 85 each. 2 batches had the traditional class, and 1 batch had the blended class using an edX course in circuits and electronics. And the results were astounding, to say the least. And so the traditional classes had a retake rate or a failure rate of 41%, which was their historical norm, 41% failure rate. For the edX blended course, the failure rate fell down to 9%. And this was a completely independent deal. San Jose State, they published it. You can talk to Moka Yumi, who's the president of San Jose State, and the professors and the students. We had nothing to do with it. It could have gone any which way. And following that, they redid the study in spring. They said they just couldn't believe themselves. They redid the study in spring, and the spring results came out to be the failure rate was 13%. And part of the reason it was 13% and not 9% was many students thought, oh wow, only 9% failed, so I don't have to do any work, and they came in and didn't do any work. And so the failure rate went up from 9 to 13%, while the traditional batches still were at 41%. So following that, the California State University system is now using, we're doing a pilot across the entire state university system, but an edX course is happening across multiple campuses. And so trust me, universities are taking it slowly, and these studies are happening. And so the blended results are, I think, looking pretty good so far.
And just 2 other quick plugs too. We had a strategy session earlier today that focused on online learning with a particular emphasis on quality. So Susan Patrick from INACOL, Michael Horn, Ken from Louisiana, that has one of the sort of the more rigorous course review systems in the country. And so if these sessions are all being recorded, so you can go back online and sort of watch that. Second, those little USB keychains that you got during your registration, that has a whole series of Digital Learning Now white papers. So and 2 white papers focus on online learning with quality specifically. It has links to some studies, not this one because this is so new, but there are some really rigorous studies that were just done by the U.S. Department of Education. And by rigorous, meaning scientifically based with random controlled trials and random assignment and whatnot. Excuse me. And showing that not only more efficient method of learning, but also just amazing sort of outcomes in terms of improved student achievement there. So those are white papers in PDF that are on your keychains. You can also find them on our website as well. This quality issue is one that I know many of you are facing inside of states. It is the reason we at Digital Learning Now, as part of Governor Bush's foundation, INACOL, and the Kelly Christensen Institute sort of exist, is to kind of help you all sort of think through these problems. There are policy mechanisms that you can use to help ensure and incent quality. A lot of states are doing pay for performance for online courses, so a provider gets a certain amount of funds up front, paid a certain percentage of funds once the student completes the course or passes the exam. So there are mechanisms that we can work with you to help address that. But great question. Next question.
Thank you very much. I'm Matthew Hancock. I'm the Minister for Skills from the British government. And for the purposes of this conference, we feel a bit like the 51st state because we're learning from you too. And one of the things, I've got a comment and then a question. One of the things we've done in the last 2 years is put computing into our curriculum from the 3rd grade. So all 3rd graders now do computing. And at the age of 16, the exams that we have then, we traditionally have always had 3 sciences, maths, physics, and chemistry, and we now have 4, maths, physics, chemistry, and computing. And we've turned it into a 4th science. And those 2 things together, I hope, will drive a revolution in the degree of computing teaching in the UK, and I just thought it was worth mentioning.
Absolutely, yeah. China's an example people ignore because, of course, China's ahead in this and that. But yeah, both the UK and Australia are way ahead of the United States in terms of computer science education.
But it was quite easy to do. There were 2 small changes that you can do in your legislature, and we're away. The question I've got is about interoperability, because it seems that the badges are a bit like a sort of wiki credits or open source credits, as opposed to a state or a government saying this is what a credit is. You're badging it essentially from a private organization. And so making sure that interacts both at state level but also internationally is something I'd be very interested in seeing how that works, maintaining the quality controls as well. So how do you ensure that you get that interoperability without there having to be a sort of, so that it happens automatically and as part of the process rather than having to fix it for each different system?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess one clarification is that we aren't issuing the badges ourselves. The badges are just sort of, again, that medium or the sort of definition that then the teaching and learning organizations are picking up and developing around that standard. So actually I know there's a effort going on, Badge the UK right now, led by Digital Me in London. But so they're working with a lot of local schools, local organizations that are just creating badges to recognize the things that they're already teaching. So some of it, again, is it's driven by the people that are already making those decisions around the teaching and learning and the assessment. The second piece about interoperability is really important, though, because I think, one, again, that open badges standard that I mentioned before is the sort of the foundation or that assurance that these credentials are speaking the same language in a way, not dictating the content within them, but saying that they all must include the criteria, they all must include the evidence, so that we know we have the same set of data, or at least baseline set of data, to then make those decisions and comparisons. So within that standard, there are things like levels, definition of levels. So you could have a certification badge, which is different than, say, a skill badge or a sort of more of a motivational types of thing. So again, it is open source in that nothing is dictated by us or by people about what has to be in that badge, but there's the sort of information model or framework to make sure that we're collecting that data. And then the second piece is the endorsement, which I talked about before, which is really where a lot of the sort of top-down or kind of top-level types of organizations like the government are really interested, because it gives the flexibility for all the teaching and learning organizations to kind of create the things that to represent what they're doing. So there's a lot of flexibility, but there's still the ability for sort of top-level organizations to review that and put kind of their mark or their check on that as well. So again, it is all about more data, having more data, and you have to then make sense of that data on the other end. But a lot of the efforts around the open badge standard and the initial work we're doing is to sort of help us kind of understand that and streamline that from the get-go.
Great question. Okay, we have time for one last question, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Beth McCann. I'm a state representative from Colorado. And this is really for Anant. We are facing a crisis in higher education in terms of funding. Our state has had to cut higher ed over and over, and we are struggling with how do we continue to support it without raising tuition again and again. So I'm interested in how you get these courses, and do you pay the professors? Do you pay the university? Is there a way that they can get some benefit financially from the courses? And also, where do you see this going? I mean, you know, our kids have to take the college entrance exams. They work really hard to get into these top quality schools. And if the courses are available free to anyone, I guess bottom line is I'm worried about higher ed, and I'm interested in how you see this happening. I think it's great what you're doing, but it does concern me.
This is the first time you've heard this question.
You know, I think it's interesting how you know, when we talk about MOOCs as a potential transformation, clearly it brings a lot of worries to the surface. But in my mind, I was worried years ago. And I think our education system's a disaster. You know, I think the higher ed system, you know, our business model is a disaster. You know, how on earth can we build, you know, can we have a system where we've incurred $1 trillion in student debt? And so clearly that system is broken. So so I think MOOCs are not a problem. I think we should view them as, you know, are they a potential technology approach that can help ameliorate some of these issues? To your question about you know, how are, you know, the cost of these courses and so on. So right now, universities are creating these courses, and we are creating business models around how to sustain ourselves and sustain the universities producing the courses. So we do a revenue share with our partners, and we're a nonprofit, so we just say, look, we don't know how this is going to go, so it's kind of a 50-50 revenue share. And so, but over time, we're going to figure things out, and so that's in terms of authorship. The other is for universities and so on that have difficulty with either not being able to offer certain kinds of courses in universities, or the you know, the cost of teaching them. One approach that like the San Jose State experiment is considering is a blended model, where to view some of these courses, we call them SPOCs, as small private online courses, as a new age textbook. So you know, we are all comfortable using a textbook in our class from written by somebody else. So here's a chance for a school to license a course, and it's a new age textbook. It's content, and this happens in high schools all day long. You know, Edgenuity is outside. You know, they license courses to high schools and a teacher teaches that in a blended model. Similarly, that this hasn't happened at the college level, so edX can help do that. And we're doing it already. We have these POCs happening in 30 to 40 universities around the world today, including this California State University system, where they license a course as a new age textbook. And the fee per student is on the order of you know, a fraction of the cost of a textbook or something like that. And then the professor, and so that way they can teach a course that they don't teach otherwise. Or they may have a professor who wants to use a textbook and improve the quality of the course and uses it that way. So, you know, and to your final question about what happens to students who send, or parents who send students to universities, I think campus education is here to stay. I think there's magic on campus. I think an online course is very different from a campus course. On campus, you know, you learn to work in groups, you learn research, you get inspired by professors, you learn rhetoric, you know, you learn problem solving together. There's a bunch of things that you cannot get from a purely online course. And plus the results are telling us that while the passing rates of MOOCs are, you know, people talk about on the order of 7%, although a large number of people taking MOOCs are really tourists, they don't plan to pass the course. But on campus, these blended classes, results are as high as 90-95%. So I think the blended model on campus is just significantly better. So I think what's going to happen is that our universities are going to get much better. They're not going to go away. They will all become better. So I view online learning as this rising tide that will hopefully lift all boats.
Great. So just one wrap-up comment, because I think this is an important note to sort of hit on, is that the temptation oftentimes with something that's new or it's a new innovation is to think of this as either or. So it's either a traditional education or it's a MOOC. Right? Either it's traditional sort of credits, graduation requirements, or it's a badge. And the issue is, I think, exactly what was just being said there, that in the end, it's not going to be this either or, it's going to be some sort of blended version of this. And so think about how this fits within your ecosystem. I mean, all of you are facing just an enormous challenge with how do you bring all your teachers up to speed on Common Core in time for the new assessments. These are awesome tools to help sort of with credentialing teachers, with help scaling professional development, with help scaling courses that may not be available, computer science, AP. We're actually thinking about right now, is there an economic model for a school district to offer every single AP course in a way that actually would save them money because you're doing it online? It sort of makes sense, but no one's sort of like built out this model. There's great ways to do this in a way that's going to complement the traditional campus, and it's not going to be an either or. So join me in thanking you.